What's up, everybody? And today we're checking out CIA begins targeting Mexican cartels. This is by the legendary Task and Purpose. We watched a video last week about the border of America, and I wanted to get more into the nitty gritty of what's actually going on with the combating the cartel side of it. And someone recommended this Task and Purpose video. I'm never going to say no to watching one of their videos, let's be honest. And also, I've just noticed that Task and Purpose is at 1.99 million subs. There is a link down below. If you haven't already, go and subscribe. Let's get them to 2 million today, shall we? Before we get started, though, check out this. Check out this. 10,565 pounds. We are over 30% of the way of the Kickstarter. In fact, we're 70% of the way with 83 backers. Let me pull this up. Look at this. Look at this. We've got 20 days to go still. 20 days to go out of 32. So it's only been 12 days. We're already 70% there. We've been nominated as a project we love by Kickstarter, and it's not slowing down. This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Please go to the Kickstarter. Check it out if you haven't already. This means the world to me. This is what I'm hoping will be the future of my life, is running morale and using this business to get kids outside more, get people outside more, and learn more about nature. At the end of the day, if you watch these videos and you were part of the military, you probably have a love for nature, because that's our bread and butter, being outside in nature. As a military man myself, I loved being outdoors, learning about survival, bushcraft, all these different things, learning about what plants can be used as edibles or medicinal use. Like, all this stuff's really important to me. And I think that the fact that most people don't have a general knowledge on that these days is kind of sad. The amount of people, like grown-ups I've spoke to, who don't even know how to identify a single tree is insane, is legitimately insane. We need to be able to know how to identify trees and mushrooms and different types of foliage around the planet, because that's incredibly important. And not even just around the planet, but just even in our local area. It's so important to be able to know that stuff. Anyway, the pitch for morale is it's a drink. It's a functional mushroom health drink that we're going to be using the same kind of model as Red Bull and Monster, where we take the profits of that drink and put it into events. So for Red Bull, Monster and stuff like that, they do like extreme sports, like mountain biking and jumping out of planes and stuff like that. Whereas what we're doing is we're taking the profits and we're putting it into nature-based activities like forest school for kids, bushcraft events, mushroom foraging, hikes, runs in nature, all this other stuff. So if being in the outdoors is important to you, which I bet it is, check out morale. Let's get it over the line. Let's get it over the line. Let's get it over 15,000. Let's do it. We're close. We're only £4,435 away, which is nothing considering we've got 20 days. So don't miss out. Be part of the movement, all right? I want to quickly give a shout out before we end that there to the people who pledged recently: Clay, Zane, Aiden, Russell, Julie, NN Donkey, John, David, Andrew, Dawn, Morgan, and Aiden. I want to give a shout out to all you lot who have pledged over the past couple days. Also, if you do back, you get your name on the backer board, which I've got to get another board because there's already 83 backers. And finally, because this is taking way too long, if you want to drink your morale out of something really cool, get yourself a chug. 10% off. Link down below for the best drinking vessel in the world. It really is. Insulated, keeps your beer cold or your drink cold for a long time. Studs on the bottom, protecting both your cup and the table that it's on. And you get free customization and free bag. They've got the morale logo there for me. And look, you can get different colors. 10% off. Link down below. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling on. It's been nearly 5 minutes. Let's pull this video up and let's see what Task and Purpose has to say, shall we?
Operated Predator drones are now conducting CIA-operated Predator drones are now conducting surveillance flights over Mexico, providing intelligence
Now, they've probably been doing it since we've had drones.
reports to Mexican authorities. Meanwhile, U.S. Special Forces just landed inside Mexico for joint training operations.
Ooh.
The Mexican military is deploying 10,000 troops along key border cities, A ton is happening very quickly that marks a significant shift in the response against drug cartels. I've consolidated all the information you need to know about the steps being taken, the effects they're having, and the response from the cartel. The New York Times dropped a huge report in mid-February that revealed a bombshell of a story. The CIA revealed that they just expanded drone flights over Mexican territory to monitor the now 6 cartel groups that were designated as foreign terrorist organizations.
6 cartel groups? How is the 6 of them? Are they like, is it like still like the classic Pablo Escobar where they're all against each other? And like, it just seems like a fictional thing, doesn't it? But there's 6 cartel drug cartels out there, or terrorist cartels, you could say at this point, because they're foreign terrorists. It's baffling that they're still even running, isn't it? Like how the Mexican government have let this happen. But at the same time, I think they've got more power than the Mexican government has.
But unnamed CIA officials explained that the intelligence they gathered is sent straight to Mexican authorities. Their primary goal is to locate drug production facilities. The government is essentially creating a hit list here, and they're passing that information on to Mexican Marines. They said that these intelligence operations were ongoing under previous administrations, but have now been intensified. This drone operation had previously never been disclosed to us regular folk in the public. So while the drones primarily are your MQ-9 Reapers that are capable of carrying missile payloads, we know that these are currently being used exclusively for surveillance. I mean, at least that's what the CIA claims, and we know the CIA would never lie about something like that.
I was going to say, we're talking about the CIA here. These are the people that have been up to some mischievous stuff for quite some time, haven't they? And so how much of what they say do we believe, and how much is it like some sort of false flag information where they're giving us something that's a bit of a lie, that maybe has slight truth in there so that they've got a different agenda? You just don't know with the CIA, do you? Let's be honest.
The U.S. government has also increased manned spy plane missions near the border from once a month to 18 times in just a 10-day period. And we're going to get into that more later. But it's not enough to just be creeping around with your multi-million-dollar eyes in the sky. Some U.S. troops are now officially south of the border inside Mexico. But first, I have some info for anyone who's ever been involved or injured in an accident. I've driven in cities all over the country, and I've had my fair share of minor accidents. For millions, though, all over the country every year, accidents on the road
Is this an ad?
can be life-changing events, affecting ability to work.
I'll get past the ad, guys.
May change your life. In mid-February.
So, some people who wonder about me skipping ads, because I do skip ads on like the Fat Electricians videos and stuff like that, it's because of the legality behind it. As someone who's had adverts on my channel before, you get some companies that are really relaxed and let you do whatever you want, and there's some companies that are very strict on what's said about them on YouTube. And so if I'm watching their ad, I could be liable for something that they're saying. So I just need to be careful with that type of stuff. A lot of people are like, oh, why are you skipping the ad? Blah, blah, blah. It's more of a legality thing, guys. And I have to be careful with that, okay?
A team of 11 Green Berets deployed to a naval base inside Mexico. This was approved
11 of my boys, my fellow U.S. brothers, Green Berets,
publicly by the Mexican Senate Commission that signed off on allowing U.S. troops to enter. It's like with vampires, you have to allow them to enter. Now, what's this special forces detachment up to? Their official by-the-book publicly stated role is to train Mexican naval special forces in unconventional warfare, counter-cartel operations. But I think there is a side quest that they've been given. They're not just there to go to the shooting range and then go slam some Modelos together afterwards, although that does sound like a good time. I wish I was invited. No, this is a major intelligence sharing opportunity. This is how human intelligence is passed along, because you can't always share information on cartel operations comfortably through your chain of command, especially if your captain's a goober and you don't trust him. These training missions are a two-way road.
Every single conversation they'll be having, they'll be noting that information. Let's be honest. Because, there'll be a lot of people in the Mexican military that know a lot about the cartel but can't say anything. Maybe the chain of command is corrupt in some way. Maybe they just don't trust certain people. And so when these Green Berets go down doing these training operations, they're going to become friends with these lads. A couple beers with them. Before you know it, they'll open up. They'll get information. All that info is going to be passed through the American system so that they can combat what's going on.
also there to discuss ways to limit the flow of American weapons trafficked into Mexico. 250,000 weapons are smuggled from the U.S. into Mexico annually, which means 70% of Mexico's weapons crimes are traced back to U.S. weapons.
Wow.
Change happened.
I mean, why am I surprised by that? Of course it would be. Most of the best weapons in the world are manufactured in America, so yeah, that makes complete sense.
Well, because after talks between the two leaders of the nations, for the first time, the U.S. government will now work jointly with Mexico to help prevent the entry of these guns.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like this is a codependent relationship we're looking at here. Mexico has the drugs, America's got the guns. It's a geopolitical match made in heaven. To me, this deployment of U.S. Special Forces indicates there's some level of cooperation still ongoing between the two nations. Yes, it's true that these kind of joint training missions between U.S. Special Forces and Mexican Special Forces are relatively routine, but what I think is different here is that the media has announced these very publicly, and there's been official Special Forces press releases. It looks like the CIA purposely chose to reveal this information about the drone flights instead of it being a leak. My personal assessment is that I think this whole article reads like we're not the target audience for this information. It reads to me like it's meant to be read by cartel leadership. The United States and Mexico...
Well, in that other video that we watched, they said that the cartel members are absolutely terrified now. Like, they feel like the U.S. military is going to storm through their door at any moment. And that makes complete sense. Like, the CIA sending this stuff out, like, they're going to be reading it. They're going to be looking at this every single day. They probably even watched videos like this on YouTube. And they're probably wondering, oh my God, are we next?
Here to be applying some PR pressure. They want the cartel to know that they're watching. It's like the U.S. is saying, we see you, we know where you sleep, and you really should change your dirty sheets. We're seeing the opening stages of some kind of media campaign designed to publicly show the cartel that moves are being made against them, because the cartel closely monitors this information space. So far, over 2,500 Mexican troops were sent by Mexico's president to hotspots on the border. A massive surge of Mexican National Guard soldiers were sent to 13 cities from Tijuana to Matamoros. Along the way, they've uncovered advanced tunnel networks used for smuggling weapons and drugs.
That's insane, isn't it?
Some of the most violent border cities in what's being described as a show of force. It's a deterrent that has coincided with a 94% drop in migrant border crossings compared to last year. And in these increased media spotlight, we're introduced to new characters that we haven't really been familiar with in a while. Allow me to introduce you to the U.S. military's Northern Command. It's an area of responsibility that, generally speaking, is the United States, Mexico, and Canada region. You probably never heard of this command in the past because they're not as sexy usually as the US CENTCOM, which deals with the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan combat area, or US PACCOM, the badasses with attitude, which deals with the Taiwan, China region. They're not even the handsome EUCOM that has been getting a lot of attention lately. For sure, NORTHCOM doesn't get as much love and attention as they deserve, but today that's starting to change. They made this press release in February, which I'm pretty sure is the first press release anyone's read in its entirety from NORTHCOM in a while. In it, they outlined that NORTHCOM has stood up Task Force 140, headquartered near the border.
Task Force 140. They couldn't just make it 141. They couldn't just add one more digit. They couldn't just do that. They couldn't do it. They should have done it. Why didn't they do it? Surely one of the people working on this is a Call of Duty fan. And they were like, they saw Task Force 140 and they thought, oh, can we just change it, lads, to 141? Surely.
The job of these 140 intelligence personnel is to analyze...
Just hire one more person. Make it 141.
...is the information collected by those surveillance flights and other intelligence sources. So allow me to put on my tinfoil hat for a moment, if you will. Sounds to me like the intelligence gathered by those spy planes and SF soldiers will go straight to here, which then creates an action plan.
Yeah.
You boys like Mexico? Yeah!
So I'd like you to meet General Gregory Gilliard. He's the man in charge of Northern Command, and a lot is revealed by looking at him. He said to the Senate last week that they're providing intelligence that gets after the cartel networks that drive the production and distribution of fentanyl and pushes it across the border, end quote. If you look at who's been in charge of Northcom going all the way back to its creation in 2002, it's almost always an Air Force or a Navy general.
Interesting.
Why is that? General Gilead, for example, has a background as a senior air battle manager. He's got more than 1,300 hours flying in an RC-135 surveillance aircraft. So that's airborne ISR is what gets this dude up in the morning. Part of the reason for this is I think this is a region that is considered mainly about air surveillance, missiles, and covert operations. That's why you see so many Air Force and Navy generals in charge of this area throughout history.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. If you're going to be doing a lot of surveillance, get the best person you can possibly do for that. And that's going to be someone who's worked in it for decades, right? Like, it makes complete sense.
It's not likely going to involve a ground war.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, CENTCOM is almost always throughout history, or when it was stood up in the 2000s, always an Army or Marine general with a deputy Air Force general, because CENTCOM traditionally involves land wars.
Yeah, it makes
This tells
complete
us
sense.
a lot about the operational focus on the border, that there's going to be a lot of surgical air surveillance and potentially airstrikes. We can actually...
Whoa, are we really going to go all the way to airstrikes, though? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they found a compound that they knew was just all cartel, and the Mexican government was like, we need to get rid of this. And the US was like, well, we're pretty good at doing stuff like that from the sky. I guess there could be airstrikes, but my God, the news if the US did an airstrike in Mexico would be insane.
Tell where some of these spy planes are by looking at the open source data from Flight 24
Wow.
that shows the surveillance aircraft's path. These planes are equipped with powerful radar systems and cameras that basically zoom in to see your nostril hair from sky. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but you could. When you hear that these have signals intelligence sensors, what that means is they can...
Why'd that guy have a flower in his mic?
Want to do that,
Watch.
but you could. When you hear that these have signals intelligence sensors,
He's literally... He's been like, I know, you can't see because my head's in the way. Let me move your head out of the way. This guy right here, you know for a fact that they're like, we're going to get a shot across here. So he's like, I'm just going to put a little flower in here just for the boost of happiness, just for the boost of morale. That's weird.
what that means is they can intercept phone communications and eavesdrop on the cartel. If the cartel is the kind of cabrones to communicate using emojis, then we'll know about it.
Yeah.
These flights come packed with 30 linguists on board, intelligence specialists, and even code breakers.
Wow.
The RC-135 is like an intelligence vacuum. It sucks up all communications in the region like a hungry, hungry hippo. But maybe due to legality, they've been careful to stay behind the 12 nautical miles from the Mexican coastline, basically sticking to designated international waters and keeping their transponders on, although there may be flights that didn't have their transponder on that we don't know about. What is most unusual about these flights is that the United States is now deploying the old-fashioned U-2 spy plane, which are now taking part in these missions. This is a blast from the past, from the 1950s Cold War era. It creeps on...
Well, this is what we know about, but what are they possibly using that we don't know about, right? Like, we know for a fact the military only tell the public, like, 70% of the truth. And there's a 30% there of stuff we are not aware of that they're doing. And so I guarantee there's other things going on here. I guarantee it. With other bits of equipment, maybe even other aircraft, maybe even satellite imagery, all this other stuff that we do not know about. I guarantee it.
From 70,000 feet in the sky and has a long 12-hour loitering time,
Wow.
which allows it to stay on station. This is something that we've never seen before in this region. The upgraded U-2S version uses a new sensor called the Vader Pod that has a synthetic aperture radar and
Why'd they call it Vader Pod? You don't want to sound like the bad guys. Call it the Skywalker Pod.
spectral imaging cameras. And here's what I mean. Take a look at this side-by-side comparison.
Whoa.
You can see how the chemical plumes from a hidden drug lab stand out in the multispectral
Whoa.
image that the U-2 would see on the right compared to the purely visual image on the left.
Wow, I've never seen that before. That's fascinating. So they're using it to look at the chemicals in the sky around the air. That is absolutely fascinating. I've never seen anything like that before.
I know it might look like a red and blue blob of an image to us, but to the trained eye, it looks like a drug lab with a giant red bullseye on it.
Wow.
But unfortunately, over the decades, the cartel has gotten good at staying hidden from these kind of signals intelligence gathering by using crazy methods. To avoid authorities in the past and to stay off the grid while still using the grid, they built an entirely alternate grid. That's right, the drug cartels built their own cell phone networks, like some kind of bizarro Mint Mobile for Sicarios. Their network runs across almost all of northern Mexico. This was first pioneered by the Los Zetas cartel, which themselves were founded by a group of former Mexican Special Forces soldiers who were themselves trained by U.S. Special Forces.
Wow.
The Zetas built this network starting sometime around 2009 after a few of their kingpins had been captured using their cell data. The Taliban and insurgents in Iraq couldn't even whip something up like this alternative grid.
That's
Even the way they did
incredible.
this was brutal. Los Zetas kidnapped engineers and technicians from local phone companies and forced them to develop a parallel mobile phone network. It's called gun-to-the-head diplomacy. Then these cartels...
That's absolutely insane, but also quite intelligent. Like, it just also goes to show how much money is involved. Like, when there's more and more money involved, they're going to do crazy stuff like this. It's genius, but scary.
expanded the enterprise into a business all its own by installing their own parasite antennas on existing commercial cell towers and threatened the technicians that service the towers to look the other way and to not report the new hardware. These pirate Wi-Fi narco antennas are all over the place. All you got to do is extort the local population and they force them to pay $50 a month. So this operation brings in $150K for them a month.
What?
This is why these high-tech spy planes from the United States are an important asset, because it's a new technology that Mexican authorities didn't have access to. It now allows them to spy on the cartel that is trying to hide off the grid. Trust me, the U.S. government has been spying on me for 3 decades. They've gotten good at this shit. But how is the cartel responding to all of this? The increased effort?
They're probably absolutely bricking it, let's be honest. Let's be honest. We know that the US government's been doing stuff to try and prevent this for a long time, but obviously with this new government in control who are very much have had a stance on this type of stuff, you guarantee they're going to be scared.
And the public moves. 2 rival narco gangs in northeastern Mexico, the Metros and the Scorpion Group, just agreed to pause their turf war with each other and to lay low.
Wow.
Leadership has gone into hiding further inland from the border and Gulf Coast regions as a direct result of the surveillance overflights. These actions are forcing them to move, which in some cases is exactly what you want. But what effects have these steps had so far? We can guesstimate, because a human smuggler who charges people between 18 and 40K to enter the United States, depending if they're from Latin America or Asia, they said in an interview to...
I couldn't even afford to be an immigrant like that. A refugee. I couldn't afford to be a refugee. I was an immigrant. It cost me a lot of money, to be fair. It cost me probably about $8,000 actually, but at least it was spread over the I don't know, 7 years that I paid it when I was living in America. But I couldn't afford to pay that. I couldn't afford to be an illegal immigrant in America.
NBC that his business had plummeted by 80% since January. His business, his human smuggling business. But when I hear about all these developments, I have a ton of questions. The first thing that I think a lot of people are curious about, it raises questions about the extent of cooperation between U.S. and Mexican authorities. The coordination of these surveillance flights with Mexican government remains a subject of debate in the open source intelligence community. However, there are some clues, I think. Mexico's Defense Secretary Sandoval said, quote, "We cannot rule espionage out because we don't know what they're doing," end quote. His comments suggest that not all aspects of the surveillance program has been fully disclosed to Mexican authorities. Meanwhile, official statements from the Mexican government say that there has been no violation of Mexican airspace, adding to the ambiguity surrounding the operation that may be intentional. When Mexico's president spoke about this, she said that she was aware that it's part of a little campaign. These statements...
A little campaign? I feel like that's underestimating it quite a bit, isn't it?
Could indicate some level of strategic ambiguity, meaning both sides want the cartel to know that they're after them, but to not know to what degree
Yeah.
these are a coordinated effort, because that information could be classified. It's like my old squad leader used to always say, shake the tree twice to get honey, but be careful of the bees.
As always, Task and Purpose with the absolutely phenomenal video. Yeah, I think this whole development's absolutely fascinating, if I'm honest with you. I think that it's something that I haven't really touched on this channel, because it's mostly just military, but this does touch on the military side of it quite a bit. It's just interesting to see this development and how quickly this development's happened. As always, Task and Purpose are phenomenal at getting this information out there, and they're at 1.99 million subs, so let's get them to 2 million subs. They really do deserve it, so link down below. Also, link down below to the morale. Check it out. Get yourself on the backer board. Also, 10% off a chug if you want to look like an absolute legend while drinking your morale or any other drink. Link down below. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video. I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.